Recently, there's been a lot of discussions about overhauling the PIP system. So, first of all, can you just talk us through what you use PIP for primarily?
So I think my biggest uses for it tend to be um, sort of travel for work events, such as when I travel to support some of my colleagues at the London Marathon, or when we've travelled for some residential events. So to adapt, sort of get some adaptive equipment, such as liquid level indicators, which let me know um, sort of when I'm reaching the top of my cup slash mug, my um, hot water dispenser, which is to help me sort of be able to make my tea and coffee independently, and um, little sort of labels and stickers and stuff like that for things like the microwave, the oven, because nowadays with a lot of ovens being either touch screen or even with the sort of dial ones, I can't see that where I'm turning it to. So little things like that, which help me to be more independent where possible.
And how are you currently feeling with the threats of overhauling the PIP system?
Um, I feel very conflicted because, on the one hand, I do understand that we do need to combat more people who are claiming it sort of unjustly, if you will. However, at the same time, there are people who genuinely need it, and this overhaul seems to be almost disregarding that need for those who do actually use it in the right way. And so, yeah, I find myself highly conflicted.
If there were to be sort of an overhaul of some sort of benefit system or taxation system, do you think it should be PIP or should we be looking at, say, a different form of benefit?
I think we should be looking at a different form of benefits, only because when we look at um, the way universal credit is being reformed, and the way a lot of benefits are coming a lot more together now, I think, I mean, at the end of the day, people will sign up to claim what they will and can and so forth. But I think it's about how do we um, it's about how do we root that out rather than how do we overhaul and scrap the entire system that is on the whole working for the people it's intended for.
Yeah, and if we do look at it, PIP is the only sort of non-means tested benefits the UK has.
It is.
But what are some unexpected costs that somebody who isn't disabled wouldn't expect disabled users to use the money for, in a sense?
I think a lot of uses, shopping online, yes, everyone does it. But for those of us who are disabled and can't go into a physical shop, so for most people, it's quite the luxury to be able to have it delivered to your home. But for those of us who, for example, myself as a visually impaired individual, shopping's my worst nightmare because I don't know what's coming up, even with shop assistance. So that's some extra cost in itself because, I'm not afforded the luxury of just being able to go to the shop and pick it up. And then travel in itself, the sort of mobility element, that's an extra thing because you're constantly having to, especially for me as a volunteer, you're constantly sort of paying out of your own pocket. And yes, there are, refunds and reimbursements, 9 times out of 10, but there are times when they won't be available for volunteers and things like that. So travel in its own is a massive cost. Obviously, as I said, I don't mean to say it's not a massive cost. These things aren't a massive cost for everybody. However, for disabled people in particular, there's a lot more um, thought and planning and stuff and budgeting that needs to go into that rather than your average sort of person, non-disabled person who might be doing some sort of summer job, might be doing some sort of, actually in work at the time and doing stuff like that do keep them on the regular income. So I think there's a lot that needs to be thought through before we decide this overhaul is the be all and end all of this situation.
I mean, and as well, if we look at it from, say, your situation, you're 20 years old, you're getting ready for university, and
Mm,
realistically, PIP is currently your only form of income that you are getting, and you're only getting
indeed.
that once a month. And if you've got to pay for a train to, I don't know, Yorkshire or somewhere, that could put you back nearly £100 potentially.
Exactly, especially because I live in London, and the biggest cost in travel is to come in and out of London rather than so much the sort of inter UK travel. So that's just an arm and a leg in itself to get out of the city, let alone go anywhere else for like uni open days and stuff. So um, and then there's taxis to get from A to B, because buses, in a different town where you don't know the system and the layout. Buses are hectic, so 9 times out of 10, I do find I have to, take some sort of taxi or Uber or something. So I think it's very, it's just these little things that go unfactored in.
And like you said, you're preparing to go to university, so presumably your costs are only going to go up from there, but you're still going
Mm.
to only have that £700 a month of PIP income, but you're still going to need to travel, you're going to need equipment for university.
Even with DSA, it's going to come with its own. It's still, any course will come obviously with its own other things. Like if you need something that isn't on your DSA that suddenly comes up for whatever reason, that's you going out of pocket now to attempt to get that in place.
Can you just sort of talk through what your experience of society and how they treat disabled people is?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my my personal experience, I must confess, um, I feel quite lucky in that I was never sort of, as such, like I have been, bullied by people who don't get it and don't want to get it, but I have never been sort of physically attacked or harmed over it, as I know a lot of people might experience. So I thank whatever lucky stars are looking off over me, but that societally, I think we tend to neglect and forget that there are people with disabilities and with things that impair them, and we tend to forget about them. And so whenever we bring in these kinds of changes, we tend to forget that, hold on, just because we have developed a slight sick note culture, um, there are actually people who still genuinely need and have to um, use the services that we do offer at the moment.
And you brought up this idea of this sick note culture, and in amongst all the PIP talk, there has also been talk of making the UK a sick note free culture. Um, how do you think if PIP was taken away and it was replaced with vouchers, that's going to impact a way a lot of people can work?
Mm.
And how do you think it's going to sort of impact this sick note free culture that the government seems to want to be aiming for?
I mean, at the end of the day, sort of like I said earlier, I mean, people will sign up to claim what they can get, what they will feel entitled to, regardless of whether we have found ourselves in a sick note culture or otherwise. And I think it's more about, how do we root out those who are sort of, legitimately claiming is that you'll be taking, for those who do actually need it, you'll be taking away from them their independence and ability to try and get themselves into work and try and get themselves, out of dire straits where they are needing to depend solely on PIP or solely on housing benefits, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And moving sort of back to the question before, which was about the treatment of disabled within society. Do you think if we sort of replace PIP with vouchers, do you think the treatment would get better or worse? Because essentially, what the government is sort of implying is that disabled people can't be trusted to know what they need, so they need to be given vouchers for specific things when that isn't necessarily the case.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, not so much on a societal treatment level, but just for like, I mean, it could get better, but there's also that spiral of, ooh, I can get a voucher for this house repair if I say, if I'm looking after someone who is, able to use, let's say, stairs in short bursts, when actually, that will cause a sort of effect. Everyone's suddenly then going to start looking for, what can I get it for, regardless of whether it's vouchers, whether it's, a regular payment. So I think there's definitely the potential for a major societal spiral.
Know that PIP is very hard to claim as it is.
Oh Lord, yeah.
So if this was to go to vouchers, would there be a whole other, I guess, form to apply for those vouchers? And how hard would that form be? Like, I don't know, but like PIP is already so hard to claim. So are they just adding an extra barrier to stop, I guess, these benefit frauds from happening, or are they just making it even more impossible for those who actually need it to claim it?
I think it would definitely be adding another wall for those who do need it. I mean, yes, it will be preventative for those who don't, but also, people are already quite, even those who do need it are already quite sort of struggling to claim it, hesitant in some cases, and aspects. So adding vouchers into the mix, or immediately changing to vouchers would be just another brick wall in an already pretty stonewall process.
And lastly, do you have any other thoughts or feelings or comments you just want to add into this whole frenzy of what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen?
I think we definitely need to get more people who are actually claiming PIP, who are disabled, into, like, I hope to see more people stepping up to the plate and maybe talking about it, in Parliament, sharing their experience with our government, because I think that's what's missing. There isn't, like, yes, people are making all these TikTok and YouTube and videos online, but people in government, for better or for worse, don't have the time to go through all of that content. So I think we do need to get some sort of panel or something to go up into Parliament and talk, directly live to them, and or a nationwide platform. I do really think that's the one thing that could swing the balance, as it were, because I think it's easy for non-disabled people to sit there and say, well, you just claim because you can, but actually when you hear the real life experience, when you see the real life experience and impact, I think it's a lot more than the general public gets an outlook at.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.